At 1 in the morning, I was elbow deep in the engine of my beat-up Ford, listening to some mindless podcast about conspiracy theories, when I heard my wife Marissa's voice drifting through our bedroom window. She was supposed to be asleep. Instead, she was whispering into her phone like a teenager planning to sneak out. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Ethan, we can't keep meeting at the usual places," she said, her voice carrying that sultry tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "What about that cabin your brother owns up in New Hampshire? We could spend the whole weekend there." My wrench slipped, clanging against the engine block. Ethan Cross, that greasy car dealer who'd been sniffing around our social circle for the past year. The same guy who'd sold us Marissa's BMW and somehow managed to get invited to every neighborhood barbecue since. I always said the only thing sleazier than Ethan's hair gel was his sales pitch, but apparently I should have been worried about something else entirely. "I'll tell Alex I'm going to that legal conference in Portland," Marissa continued. "He won't question it. He never does." She was right about that. After 15 years of marriage, I'd gotten comfortable enough to trust the woman who shared my bed, raised our daughter Sophie with me, and knew every one of my secrets. Comfortable enough to be the biggest fool in suburban Massachusetts. I wiped my greasy hands on an old rag and crept closer to the house. The bedroom window was cracked open despite the October chill, and Marissa's voice was getting more animated. "I know, baby. I know. I want you too," she purred. "And don't worry about Tessa. She's completely on board with covering for us. She thinks Alex is holding me back anyway." Tessa Duval, Marissa's best friend since law school, the queen bee of our neighborhood social hierarchy. The same woman who'd been giving me increasingly cold shoulders at community events. The same woman who'd been whispering in corners with other wives whenever I walked into a room. My stomach dropped as the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. 3 more weeks, Marissa said. Then we'll have that long weekend in the French villa Tessa rented. Alex will never suspect a thing. I stood there in my driveway, covered in motor oil and betrayal, as my wife planned her romantic getaway with another man. The same French villa where we'd supposedly celebrated our anniversary last month. The same trip where Marissa had insisted I fly home early because of a work emergency that never seemed to materialize. The call ended, and I heard the soft thud of her phone hitting the nightstand. Through the window, I could see her silhouette as she stretched and settled back into bed. Our bed. The bed where she'd been lying to my face for God knows how long. I finished working on the truck in silence, my mind racing. By the time I cleaned up and slipped back into the house, I'd made a decision. If Marissa wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye with the same lips that had been making plans with Ethan Cross 12 hours earlier. "Have a good day at the shop, honey," she said, adjusting her perfectly pressed blazer. "I might be late tonight. Big case coming up." "Sure thing," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'll probably work late too. Got a transmission that's giving me trouble." She nodded absently, already checking her phone, probably texting her lover. After she left, I sat at our kitchen table with my coffee, staring at the framed photos lining the windowsill. Our wedding day, Sophie's high school graduation, family vacations where we all looked happy. All of it felt like evidence of a crime now. I pulled out my phone and called my old friend Danny, who ran a security company downtown. "Lex, what's up?" Danny's voice was warm and familiar. "Haven't heard from you in months." "I need a favor," I said. "The kind that stays between us." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves very small cameras and a French villa." There was a pause. "Jesus, Lex, you sure about this?" "I'm sure about nothing anymore. That's the problem." Danny sighed. "All right, meet me at Murphy's bar at lunch. We'll talk." Murphy's bar hadn't changed since I'd started drinking there 20 years ago. Same sticky floors, Same neon beer signs, same bartender who'd seen enough drama to fill a library. Ricky wiped down glasses with a rag that had seen better decades and nodded when I walked in. "Usual?" he asked. "Make it a double." Danny was already waiting in our old booth, a small black case on the table between us. He looked older than I remembered, gray creeping into his dark hair, but his eyes were still sharp. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Feel worse." I slid into the booth and gestured at the case. "That what I think it is?" "State-of-the-art surveillance equipment, wireless, motion-activated, nearly invisible. Also completely legal as long as you're recording on your own property." He opened the case, revealing devices no bigger than shirt buttons. "The villa's in your name too, right?" "Joint ownership. Bought it 2 years ago as an investment. Then you're covered legally. These will record everything, video and audio, battery life of about a week, and they upload directly to a secure cloud server." Danny's expression grew serious. "But Lex, once you see what's on these recordings, you can't unsee it. You sure you want to go down this road?" I thought about Marissa's whispered phone conversation, about Tessa's knowing smirks, about all the times I'd felt like I was missing some inside joke. "I'm already down it," I said. "I just want to know how deep it goes." Danny showed me how to operate the cameras, how to access the recordings, how to hide them in plain sight. By the time we finished, I felt like a private investigator instead of a guy who fixed engines for a living. "One more thing," Danny said as we prepared to leave. "Whatever you find, don't do anything stupid. Don't confront anyone while you're angry. Don't break any laws, and for God's sake, don't hurt anybody." "I'm not a violent man, Danny." "No, but you're a hurt man, and hurt men do stupid things." That afternoon, I drove to the villa. It was a 3-hour trip through winding New England roads, past farms and forests that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. The villa itself was a modest but elegant stone house overlooking a small lake. We'd been so proud when we bought it, talking about all the romantic weekends we'd spend there, all the memories we'd make. Instead, my wife was making memories with someone else. I installed the cameras methodically, one in the living room, one in the bedroom, one in the kitchen. Each one was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The whole process took less than an hour, but it felt like I was performing surgery on my own life. The drive home was torture. Every mile brought me closer to having to look Marissa in the eye and pretend everything was normal. By the time I pulled into our driveway, she was already home, cooking dinner like the perfect wife she'd never actually been. "How was your day?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Productive," I said. "Fix that transmission." "How about you? Big case still keeping you busy?" "Mm-hmm." She stirred something that smelled like garlic and lies. "I might need to travel next week. Client meeting in Portland." There it was, the setup for her romantic weekend. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her, demand the truth, scream about everything I knew. Instead, I kissed her cheek and asked if she needed help with dinner. "I've got it handled," she said, still not meeting my eyes. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering how many other nights she'd been planning her betrayals while I slept peacefully beside her. When she finally started snoring softly, I slipped out of bed and went to my laptop. The cameras were already recording. 3 days later, the recordings started coming in. I was in my shop, supposedly rebuilding a carburetor, but really just staring at my phone screen as notification after notification popped up. Motion detected, recording in progress, files uploading. My hand shook as I opened the first video. Marissa walked into the villa's living room, but she wasn't alone. Ethan Cross followed her, his hands already on her waist, pulling her close. Behind them came Tessa, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a smile I'd never seen before. "Finally," Marissa breathed, melting into Ethan's arms. I thought we'd never get away from Alex's suspicious looks. "He's getting paranoid," Tessa agreed, setting down the champagne. Good thing he's too stupid to actually figure anything out. They laughed. All three of them laughed at me, at my stupidity, at how easy it had been to fool the trusting husband. I watched my wife kiss another man with a passion she'd never shown me. I watched Tessa pour champagne and toast to new beginnings and old fools. I watched them move to the bedroom, and I forced myself to keep watching even when every instinct told me to stop. But it was the conversation afterward that really destroyed me. "How much longer do we have to keep this up?" Ethan asked, lighting a cigarette by the bedroom window. "I'm getting tired of sneaking around." "Not much longer," Marissa replied, curled up against his chest. "I've been documenting everything for the divorce. His drinking, his anger issues, his financial problems. My lawyer says I'll get the house, the villa, and primary custody of Sophie." "What drinking? What anger issues?" I muttered to my phone screen. I barely drank except for the occasional beer, and I'd never raised my voice to Marissa in 15 years of marriage. "The beauty of it," Tessa chimed in from the living room, "is that Alex is so naive, he'll never see it coming. By the time I'm done spreading rumors about his behavior, everyone in town will believe Marissa's the victim here." "And his business?" Ethan asked. "Won't survive the scandal," Marissa said confidently. "Who wants their car fixed by an abusive drunk? He'll be lucky to afford a studio apartment when I'm done with him." They'd planned everything. The affair was just the beginning. They were going to destroy my reputation, take my daughter, steal my property, and ruin my livelihood. And they were going to do it all while painting themselves as the victims. I sat in my shop, surrounded by the honest work of fixing broken things, and realized that some things couldn't be fixed. Some things could only be broken in return. My phone rang. Javi, my assistant, calling from the front office. "Boss, you okay back there? You've been awful quiet." "I'm fine, Javi. Just thinking." "Well, think faster. Mrs. Patterson's here for her civic, and she's asking a lot of questions about when you're going to finish it." I looked around at the half-completed repairs, the organized chaos of my workspace, the life I'd built with my own hands. They wanted to take all of this away from me. They wanted to destroy everything I'd worked for, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the nice guy. I closed the video app and opened my contacts. Time to make some calls. The first call was to my lawyer, Jim Morrison. Not the dead rock star, just a guy from Southie who'd helped me with the villa purchase and my business incorporation. Jim had the kind of face that belonged in a courtroom, all sharp angles and skeptical expressions. "Lex, what can I do for you?" "I need to know about divorce law, specifically what happens when you can prove adultery." There was a pause. "Jesus, Lex, I'm sorry to hear that. Massachusetts is a no-fault state, so adultery doesn't automatically change property division, but it can influence things, especially if there's evidence of planning or conspiracy to defraud. You got proof?" "Video evidence. Multiple participants. Recorded on my own property." "Bring everything to my office tomorrow. And Lex, don't talk to anyone about this yet. Don't confront your wife. Don't do anything that could be construed as threatening or harassing. Let the evidence speak for itself." The second call was to my old boxing coach, Mick Sullivan. Mick ran a gym downtown where guys like me went to hit things legally. He'd trained me back when I thought I might go pro, before I realized I was better with engines than I was with my fists. "Lexi boy." Mick's gravelly voice was warm with affection. "Haven't seen you in months. You getting soft on me?" "Soft enough that people think they can walk all over me," I said. "I need to get back in fighting shape, Mick, not to hurt anyone," I added quickly, just to remember who I used to be. "Come by tonight. We'll see what's left of that left hook." The third call was to my brother-in-law, Pete, who worked for the local newspaper. Pete had always liked me better than his sister did, and he had a nose for scandal that had served him well in his career. "Alex, what's up? Marissa treating you right?" "That's actually what I wanted to talk about. You interested in a story about corruption in the local legal community? Something involving charity fraud and conflict of interest?" "Always. What kind of timeline we talking about?" "Soon. I'll have documentation within the week. The last call was the hardest. Sophie was away at college, and I'd been dreading the conversation I knew we'd have to have eventually. But she deserved to hear the truth from me before she heard lies from everyone else. Dad? Sophie's voice was bright and happy. This is a surprise. You never call during the week. Hey, sweetheart. How are classes going? Great. I'm really loving my constitutional law course. Professor Williams says I have a natural talent for legal reasoning. Mom would be so proud. My heart broke a little more. Sophie, I need to tell you something. About your mother and me. The brightness faded from her voice. Oh no. Are you guys getting divorced? It's complicated, honey. But I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever you hear about me, I love you more than anything in the world. That will never change. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? Your mother's been having an affair with Ethan Cross, and Tessa's been helping her cover it up. Silence. Then, that's impossible. Mom would never. And Aunt Tessa loves our family. I have proof, Sophie. Video evidence. I know it's hard to believe, but I don't want to hear this. Her voice cracked. Why are you trying to ruin everything? We're happy. We're a happy family. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, knowing I'd just lost my daughter too, at least temporarily. But she needed to know the truth before Marissa's version of events poisoned her against me forever. That night, I went to Mick's gym. The familiar smell of sweat and leather wrapped around me like an old coat. Mick took one look at my face and pointed toward the heavy bag. Work it out, kid. Whatever's eating you, leave it on that bag. I hit that bag until my knuckles bled through the wraps. I hit it until my shoulders screamed and my lungs burned. I hit it until I remembered what it felt like to be strong instead of stupid, dangerous instead of naive. When I finally stopped, Mick was leaning against the ropes, studying me. Feel better? Feel different, I said, breathing hard. Like I've been asleep for 15 years and just woke up. Good. Now go home and get some rest. Tomorrow you start fighting back. But I wasn't ready to go home yet. Instead, I drove to Murphy's bar, where Ricky was working the late shift. The place was nearly empty, except for a few regulars nursing their demons in the corner booths. Rough day? Ricky asked, sliding a beer across the bar without being asked. Rough life, I replied. Ricky, you've been tending bar for what, 30 years? 32 come December. You ever see a marriage survive infidelity? Ricky considered this, polishing a glass with mechanical precision. Survive? Sure. Plenty of couples stay together after cheating, but thrive? That's different. That requires forgiveness on both sides, and most cheaters aren't sorry they did it. They're sorry they got caught. What about revenge? You ever see that work out? Revenge is a funny thing, Ricky said slowly. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But sometimes, just sometimes, the poison turns out to be medicine. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop being the kind of person who gets walked on. I finished my beer in silence, thinking about poison and medicine, about sleeping and waking up, about the difference between surviving and thriving. When I finally went home, Marissa was already in bed, her phone charging on the nightstand. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep peacefully while my world burned around us. Tomorrow, I decided, she'd start losing some sleep too. The next morning, Marissa announced her Portland trip over breakfast, just as I'd known she would. She'd even printed out a fake conference schedule to leave on the kitchen counter, complete with seminar titles and speaker names. The attention to detail was almost impressive. I'll be back Sunday evening, she said, buttering her toast with the same casual precision she applied to destroying our marriage. Think you can handle things here? I'll manage, I said. Maybe I'll invite some friends over. Have a guys' night. She looked up sharply. What friends? It was a telling question. Over the past year, Marissa and Tessa had systematically isolated me from our social circle. Dinner invitations had dried up. Neighborhood barbecues happened without us. Even my old poker buddies had started making excuses when I called. "You know," I said vaguely, "the usual crowd." "Well, don't make too much noise. Mrs. Henderson already complains about your truck." After she left, I drove to Jim Morrison's office with a flash drive full of evidence. Jim's law office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, all dark wood and leather-bound books. It smelled like justice and old coffee. "Jesus Christ," Jim muttered, watching the villa recordings on his laptop. "This is comprehensive." "There's more," I said, handing him printed transcripts of text messages I'd recovered from our phone bill. Financial records showing unexplained expenses, credit card charges for hotels and restaurants I never went to, and this. I showed him a bank statement revealing a joint account I'd never known about, funded by regular transfers from our savings. "They've been planning this for months," Jim said, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe longer. The good news is, this kind of premeditation and deception changes everything. The court won't look kindly on systematic fraud." "What about my business? My reputation?" "That's where things get interesting." Jim pulled up something on his computer. "I did some research on Tessa Duval after your call yesterday. She's the treasurer of 3 local charities, sits on the school board, and runs the neighborhood association. She's also been very sloppy with financial records." He showed me a series of documents, charity filings that didn't add up, expense reports with suspicious patterns, tax forms with glaring inconsistencies. "I think your wife's friend has been skimming money from charitable donations," Jim said. "And if someone were to bring this to the attention of the state attorney general—" "Someone like a concerned citizen with documentation?" "Exactly. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." I left Jim's office feeling like I had weapons instead of just wounds. My next stop was Pete's newspaper office, where I delivered a thick envelope of financial documents and a promise of more to come. "This is explosive stuff," Pete said, flipping through the papers. "If even half of this checks out, it's front-page material. How did you get all this?" "Public records, mostly. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look." That afternoon, I went to Sophie's school to talk to her guidance counselor. Mrs. Chen had known our family for years, and I wanted her to hear the truth before the rumor mill started grinding. "Mr. Harper," she said, gesturing for me to sit down in her cluttered office. "Sophie called me this morning. She's very upset about some family issues." "I imagine she is. Her mother's been having an affair, and I'm filing for divorce. Sophie's going to hear a lot of different versions of what happened, and I want her to know she can come to you if she needs someone neutral to talk to." Mrs. Chen's expression remained professionally neutral. "That's very thoughtful. Is there anything else I should know?" "Marissa might try to paint me as an unfit parent. She's been documenting fictional drinking problems and anger issues. None of it's true, but she's very convincing. I've known you for 4 years, Mr. Harper. You've never missed a parent conference, never raised your voice at a school event, never shown any signs of the problems you're describing. If anyone asks me, I'll tell them exactly that." It was a small victory, but it felt huge. Someone believed me. Someone would speak up for my character when the character assassination began. That evening, I drove to Ethan's car lot. Cross Motors was exactly what you'd expect from a sleazy dealer: flashing lights, inflated prices, and promises too good to be true. Ethan himself was in the office, visible through the plate glass windows, talking on the phone with animated gestures. I didn't go inside. Instead, I called the number on the "We Buy Cars" sign and waited. "Cross Motors, this is Ethan." "Hi, I've got a 1995 Ford pickup that's been giving me trouble. Transmission's shot, engine's burning oil. Probably not worth much, but I thought I'd see if you were interested." "Sure, bring it by tomorrow and we'll take a look." "Actually, I'm right outside. Mind if I pull around back? Don't want to clutter up your sales floor with a junker." Through the window, I watched Ethan look out at the parking lot, trying to spot me. Sure, no problem. I drove my perfectly functional truck around to the back of the lot, where Ethan met me with his practiced salesman smile. Up close, he was smaller than he looked in the villa videos, with thinning hair and soft hands that had never done real work. Let's take a look, he said, popping the hood. Doesn't look too bad. Engine seems clean. Appearances can be deceiving, I said. Sometimes things that look good on the surface are rotten underneath. He glanced at me sharply, but kept examining the engine. Well, I could probably give you $1,500 for it, as is. That's generous, almost too generous. Makes me wonder what you're really after. I'm sorry? I leaned against the truck, studying his face. You know, Ethan, I've been thinking about trust lately. How easy it is to lose, how hard it is to rebuild. You seem like a trustworthy guy, the kind of man who'd never lie to a customer, never cheat on a deal. His smile was getting tighter. I try to run an honest business. I'm sure you do, just like I try to run an honest marriage. But sometimes people surprise you, you know? Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones planning to screw you over. Look, if you don't want to sell the truck... Oh, I'm not here about the truck, Ethan. I smiled, and I could see him recognize something dangerous in my expression. I'm here about my wife. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Marissa Harper. Blonde, about 5'6", great in bed according to the videos I've been watching. Ring any bells? He took a step backward. You're crazy. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of being the only honest person in a dishonest game. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot from the villa footage. Recognize this? Because I've got about 6 hours of similar material. Ethan's hand shook as he stared at the image. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly, I said, stepping closer. You picked the wrong man to mess with. You thought I was some dumb mechanic who'd never figure it out. You thought you could steal my wife, destroy my marriage, and walk away clean. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. But here's what you didn't count on. I'm not just a mechanic. I'm a mechanic who knows how to fix things. And sometimes, fixing one thing means breaking something else. I got back in my truck and started the engine. Enjoy your weekend with Marissa, Ethan. Make sure you smile for the cameras. As I drove away, I could see him in my rear-view mirror, standing in the parking lot with his phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling Marissa, probably panicking, probably wondering how much I really knew. The answer was everything. And by Monday, everyone else would know it too. Friday evening came with the kind of autumn chill that made you want to stay inside with someone you loved. Instead, I was sitting in Murphy's bar, waiting for my so-called friends to show up for a conversation that was long overdue. I'd sent the same text to 5 guys I'd considered my closest friends for years. Need to talk. Murphy's bar, 7 p.m. It's important. Only 3 had bothered to respond, and only 2 had actually shown up. Mike Patterson arrived first, looking uncomfortable in his weekend casual clothes. Mike was an insurance adjuster, the kind of guy who measured risk for a living and avoided it in his personal life. We'd been friends since high school, or at least I thought we had been. Alex, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. You sounded pretty serious in your text. Serious situation, I replied. Thanks for coming. Tom Bradley showed up 10 minutes later, checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. Tom sold real estate and had the kind of smile that could convince you a swamp was a lakefront property. He'd helped us find our house, been to our barbecues, called me buddy for 15 years. This better be quick, Tom said, not bothering with pleasantries. Jennifer's got dinner plans. Where's everyone else? I asked. Mike and Tom exchanged glances, the kind of glance that said they'd been talking about me behind my back. Look, Alex, Mike said carefully. Maybe it's better if we keep this small. Intimate. Intimate. Right. I signaled Ricky for another round. So tell me, guys, how long have you known about Marissa and Ethan? The silence was deafening. Mike stared at his beer like it held the secrets of the universe. Tom checked his phone. Come on, I pressed. We're all friends here. Surely someone was going to mention that my wife was screwing around behind my back. Alex, Tom said finally. We didn't know for sure. There were rumors, but… Rumors. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What kind of rumors? People talk, Mike said defensively. You know how it is in the neighborhood. Someone sees them having coffee together, someone else notices them leaving the same restaurant. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. And you didn't think to mention these rumors to me? Another exchange of glances. Tom cleared his throat. Honestly, Alex, we thought you knew. The way you've been acting lately, so paranoid and suspicious. Tessa said you'd been drinking more, getting angry over little things. Tessa said. The pieces clicked together. What else did Tessa say? She's worried about Marissa, Mike said. Says you've been emotionally abusive, controlling. She thinks Marissa's afraid of you. I stared at these two men I'd considered friends, these two men who'd believed lies about me without ever asking for my side of the story. So instead of talking to me, your friend of 15 years, you decided to ostracize me based on gossip from Tessa Duval. It wasn't like that, Tom protested, but his voice lacked conviction. What was it like then? Because from where I sit, it looks like you all got together and decided I was the bad guy. Made it easy to cut me out of your lives without feeling guilty about it. Mike leaned forward, his face flushed. You want to know the truth, Alex? You've been difficult to be around, always complaining about work, always suspicious of everyone's motives. Maybe if you'd been a better husband, Marissa wouldn't have looked elsewhere. The words hit like a physical blow. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, something that had been building for months without me realizing it. A better husband, I repeated slowly. Right, because cheating is always the betrayed spouse's fault. That's not what I meant. No, that's exactly what you meant. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. You want to know what kind of husband I was? Listen to this. I played a recording from the villa, Marissa's voice crystal clear as she detailed her plans to destroy my reputation and take everything I'd worked for. I watched my friends' faces change as they heard her laugh about my stupidity, as they heard Tessa outline her campaign of lies and social manipulation. When it finished, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Jesus, Mike whispered. Alex, I had no idea. No, you didn't, because you never asked. You never came to me and said, hey, we're hearing some disturbing things about you. What's your side of the story? You just believed the lies and walked away. Tom was staring at his hands. We should have talked to you. Yeah, you should have. But you didn't. And now I know exactly what your friendship is worth. I stood up, throwing money on the table. When this all comes out, when everyone knows the truth about Marissa and Tessa and their little conspiracy, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember that you chose to believe lies about me rather than trust the man you called your friend. Alex, wait, Mike called as I headed for the door. We can fix this. We can… I turned back to face them, and I could see them flinch at whatever they saw in my expression. Fix this? You think there's something to fix here? I shook my head. You made your choice when you decided I was guilty without a trial. Now you get to live with it. Outside Murphy's bar, the October air felt cleaner somehow. I stood on the sidewalk watching normal people live their normal lives and realized I wasn't one of them anymore. The nice guy who'd trusted everyone and assumed the best in people was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that loyalty was a luxury he could no longer afford. My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. At the conference hotel, miss you already. I typed back, miss you too. Have fun. But what I was really thinking was, Smile for the cameras, sweetheart. This is going to be your last performance. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a car crash. I was at my shop by 6 a.m., not because I had work to do, but because I couldn't stand being in my house any longer. Every room held memories that felt like lies now. Every photograph on the wall looked like evidence of a fraud I'd been too stupid to recognize. Javi found me sitting in my office, staring at my computer screen. "Boss, you okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week." "Haven't slept much," I admitted. "Big day today, Javi. Lots of things coming to a head." "Anything I can help with?" I looked at this kid who'd been working for me for 3 years, who'd never lied to me, never betrayed my trust, never made me question my own sanity. "Actually, yeah. I might need you to run the shop for a while. Think you can handle it?" His chest puffed up with pride. "Absolutely, boss. You can count on me." At least someone could. My phone rang at 8:30, Jim Morrison, calling with news. "The divorce papers are filed," he said without preamble. "Marissa should be served at her office within the hour. I've also forwarded our evidence package to the State Attorney General's office regarding Tessa's charity fraud." "How long before that becomes public?" "Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on how fast they want to move. But Alex, there's something else. I got a call this morning from Marissa's lawyer." "She already has a lawyer?" "Richard Steinberg, high-end divorce attorney, specializes in high-conflict cases. He called to offer a settlement conference." "Before she's even been served?" "That's what I thought. Either she's more prepared than we realized, or someone tipped her off that you were making moves." I thought about Ethan's panicked phone call in the parking lot, about the way fear had transformed his face when he saw the villa footage. "Doesn't matter. Let her come." The second call came at 9:15. Pete, from the newspaper. "Alex, we're running the charity fraud story tomorrow. Front page, above the fold. Local socialite under investigation for embezzlement. You want to comment?" "No comment. Let the evidence speak for itself." "Fair enough. But heads up. This is going to cause a shitstorm in your neighborhood. Tessa Duvall has a lot of friends, and they're not going to be happy when they find out their charitable donations were funding her shopping sprees." The third call was the one I'd been dreading. Sophie, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Dad, what did you do? Mom called me. She's hysterical. She says you're trying to destroy the family, that you've lost your mind." "Sophie, honey, slow down. What exactly did she tell you?" "She says you hired private investigators to spy on her, that you're spreading lies about Aunt Tessa, that you're having some kind of breakdown. She wants me to come home right away." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything I was about to lose. "Sophie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your mother has been having an affair with Ethan Cross for months. She and Tessa have been planning to divorce me and take everything I own. I have video evidence of all of it." "I don't believe you." "I know it's hard to accept, but I'm going to send you something, and I need you to watch it. All of it. And then I need you to decide for yourself who's telling the truth." "I don't want to see any videos. I don't want to know about any of this. Why can't you just fix it? Why can't you just forgive her and make everything go back to normal?" Because normal was a lie, I wanted to say. Because forgiveness required remorse, and remorseful people didn't plan to destroy the lives of the people they'd wronged. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself was to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Instead, I said, "I love you, Sophie. More than anything in the world. That's why I'm fighting for the truth instead of accepting the lies." She hung up on me. At 11 a.m., Marissa called. Her voice was ice-cold fury wrapped in false calm. "You bastard," she said without preamble. "How dare you have me served at work? How dare you embarrass me in front of my colleagues?" "Embarrass you?" I almost laughed. "Marissa, you've been screwing another man for months and planning to destroy my life. I think embarrassment is the least of your concerns. I don't know what kind of sick fantasy you've cooked up, but—" "Villa recordings, March 15th through 17th, I interrupted. "You, Ethan, and Tessa. 6 hours of footage. Would you like me to describe some of the highlights? Silence. Then, you're insane. Maybe, but I'm not unfaithful, I'm not a liar, and I'm not going to let you destroy me without a fight. This isn't over, Alex. You have no idea what you've started. I didn't start anything, I'm just finishing it. She hung up, but I could hear the fear behind her anger. Good. Let her be afraid for once. The fourth call came at noon. Danny, from the security company. Lex, you need to be careful. Someone broke into my office last night, tried to access our servers. Nothing was taken, but they were definitely looking for something specific. The villa recordings? That'd be my guess. Good thing everything's backed up in multiple locations. But these people are getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Thanks for the warning. There's something else. I've been asking around about Ethan Cross. Guy's got some serious debts. Gambling mostly, but also some bad business investments. Word is he owes money to some very unforgiving people. How much money? Enough that he might do something drastic to get his hands on a quick payday, like, say, marrying a soon-to-be divorced woman with substantial assets. The pieces fell into place. This wasn't just about lust or love or even revenge. This was about money. Ethan needed Marissa's assets to pay his debts, and Marissa needed Ethan's validation to justify destroying her marriage. Tessa was the puppet master, pulling strings and settling old grudges while her friends destroyed each other. But they'd all made the same mistake. They'd assumed I was too weak, too trusting, too nice to fight back effectively. They were about to learn how wrong they were. At 2 p.m., I drove to Sophie's school. Mrs. Chen met me in the parking lot, her expression grave. Mr. Harper, I got several calls this morning, parents asking questions about your family situation, wondering if Sophie was safe at home with you. Let me guess. The calls started with Tessa Duval. How did you know? Because she's been orchestrating a campaign to destroy my reputation for months. What did you tell them? The truth, that I've never seen any evidence of the behavior they were describing, and that in my professional opinion, you're a devoted father who's dealing with a difficult situation. I felt a surge of gratitude so strong, it almost brought tears to my eyes. Thank you. There's more. Sophie called the school this morning, asking to speak with the counselor. She's very confused and upset. She wants to believe her mother, but she also knows you're not the kind of man who would lie about something this serious. I sent her the evidence. Video recordings of her mother's affair and the conspiracy to frame me as an abusive husband. It's not easy to watch, but she needs to see the truth. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. Sometimes the truth is the cruelest gift we can give someone. But it's still a gift. That evening, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the debris of my former life. The phone had been ringing all day. Reporters, neighbors, old friends who'd suddenly remembered my existence. I'd ignored them all. At 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Sophie standing on my front porch, her face streaked with tears. I opened the door, and she fell into my arms. I watched the videos, she whispered against my chest. I watched all of them. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I held my daughter and felt something broken inside me start to heal. Not everything, not enough to make up for all I'd lost, but something. It's okay, sweetheart. You couldn't have known. How could she do this to us? How could Aunt Tessa help her? I thought they loved our family. I think they love themselves more, I said, and sometimes that's all people are capable of. We sat on the couch together, father and daughter united against the storm that was coming, because this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the newspaper story would break. Tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know the truth about Tessa's charity fraud. Tomorrow, Marissa and her conspirators would face the consequences of their choices. But tonight, I had my daughter back. Tonight, I wasn't alone, and tomorrow, I was going to finish what they started. Tuesday morning's newspaper hit the neighborhood like a bomb. Pete had done his job well. The front-page story about Tessa's embezzlement was thorough, damning, and impossible to ignore. By 8 a.m., my phone was ringing non-stop with calls from neighbors who'd suddenly remembered we were friends. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I drove to the office of Channel 7 News, where I had an appointment with investigative reporter Sarah Mitchell. Sarah had built her career on exposing corruption and fraud, and she'd been very interested when I'd called her the day before. "Mr. Harper," she said, shaking my hand in the lobby, "thank you for coming in. I understand you have information related to the Tessa Duval embezzlement story." "I have more than information," I said, following her to a conference room. "I have the whole story: charity fraud, adultery, conspiracy to commit fraud in divorce proceedings, and I have video evidence of all of it." For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything: the villa recordings, the financial documents, the systematic campaign to destroy my reputation. Sarah's eyes got wider with each revelation. "This is incredible," she said, reviewing the evidence on her laptop. "You realize this story is going to destroy several lives?" "Those lives were already destroyed," I replied. "I'm just making sure everyone knows who did the destroying. We'll need to verify everything independently, of course. But if this all checks out, we're looking at a major exposé. Are you prepared for the fallout?" I thought about my empty house, my lost friends, my daughter's tears. The fallout already happened. Now it's time for the truth. While Sarah and her team worked on their story, I drove to Cross Motors. The car lot looked different in daylight. Smaller, shabbier, more desperate. Ethan's office was empty, but I found him in the service bay, arguing with a mechanic about a repair estimate. "Ethan," I called out, "we need to talk." He looked up, and I could see the fear in his eyes immediately. "I don't have anything to say to you." "That's fine. I'll do the talking." I walked closer, and he backed away instinctively. "I know about your debts. Gambling debts specifically. About $150,000 to some very unpleasant people." His face went white. "How did you—" "I know about a lot of things now. I know that's why you targeted my wife. Not for love, not even for lust, for money. You needed her assets to pay off your debts. You're crazy." "Maybe, but I'm not broke, and I'm not desperate, and I'm not about to lose everything because I made bad bets on basketball games." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken that morning, his prized Corvette, sitting in my shop's parking lot. "Nice car," I said casually. "Shame about the sugar in the gas tank." "You son of a bitch. That car is worth $40,000. Was worth $40,000. Now it's worth whatever the scrapyard will pay for it. But don't worry. I'm sure your creditors will understand when you explain that you can't pay them because you were too busy screwing another man's wife to notice someone sabotaging your car." Ethan lunged at me, but I'd been expecting it. 3 months of training with Mick had restored reflexes I'd forgotten I had. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and watched him stumble into a tool cart. "Careful, Ethan. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself, although I hear your creditors might do that for you if you don't pay up soon." "This isn't over," he snarled, picking himself up off the ground. "Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment you decided to mess with my family. You just didn't know it yet." I left him there, surrounded by the wreckage of his failing business and his failing schemes. My next stop was Tessa's house, but I didn't get out of the car. I just sat across the street, watching as a steady stream of cars pulled up to her driveway. Neighbors, friends, fellow charity board members, all coming to demand explanations for the morning's revelations. Through her front window, I could see Tessa gesticulating wildly, probably spinning some story about being framed or misunderstood. But the body language of her visitors told a different story. Arms crossed, heads shaking, people walking away in disgust. My phone rang. Jim Morrison. "Alex, we have a problem. Marissa's lawyer is claiming you obtained the villa recordings illegally. They're threatening to have them thrown out of evidence." "Can they do that?" "Not likely. You own the property. You have the right to record on it. but they're also claiming harassment and stalking. They want a restraining order. I laughed, surprising myself. Let them try. I've got witnesses who can testify that I never threatened anyone, never followed anyone, never did anything but expose the truth about their conspiracy. There's something else. Marissa cleaned out your joint accounts this morning, about $30,000. I figured she might try that. Good thing I moved most of our assets to separate accounts last week. You did what? I'm not just a mechanic, Jim. I'm a mechanic who learns from his mistakes. I've been 3 steps ahead of them since the moment I found out about the affair. That evening, Channel 7's investigative report aired. Sarah Mitchell had done a masterful job, weaving together the charity fraud, the adultery, and the conspiracy into a narrative that was both compelling and damning. The villa recordings were edited for television, but the audio was crystal clear. Marissa, Ethan, and Tessa discussing their plans to destroy my life with casual cruelty. I watched it at home with Sophie, who'd decided to stay with me rather than return to college immediately. She held my hand during the worst parts, when her mother's voice filled our living room with lies and betrayal. I can't believe I lived with her for 18 years and never saw this side of her, Sophie said during a commercial break. People show you what they want you to see, I replied. Your mother was very good at being the person she thought you needed her to be. What happens now? Now we rebuild. We figure out who we are without the people who betrayed us. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Sophie. Your mother? Probably. Or Tessa. Does it matter? I typed back. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. Then I blocked the number. At 10 p.m., there was a knock at our door. Sophie looked through the peephole and turned back to me with surprise. It's Mike and Tom, from the bar the other night. I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. I opened the door to find my former friends standing on my porch, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Alex, Mike said awkwardly. We saw the news. Good for you. We wanted to apologize, Tom added. We should have believed you. We should have been better friends. I looked at these 2 men who'd abandoned me when I needed them most, who'd believed lies about me without question, who'd only come crawling back when the truth became too public to ignore. You're right, I said. You should have been better friends, but you weren't, and now it's too late. Come on, Alex, Mike pleaded. We made a mistake. Can't we move past this? Move past it? I felt that familiar cold hardness settle in my chest. You didn't make a mistake, Mike. You made a choice. You chose to believe I was an abusive drunk rather than trust the man you'd known for 15 years. You chose to ostracize me rather than ask for my side of the story. You chose to abandon me when I needed friends most. We're here now, Tom said weakly. Now that it's safe. Now that you know I was telling the truth. Now that supporting me won't cost you anything socially. I shook my head. That's not friendship. That's opportunism. So what? We're not friends anymore? Mike asked. We stopped being friends the moment you decided I was guilty without a trial. Everything since then has just been you figuring out what I already knew. I closed the door on their protests and apologies. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, even when the betrayers finally recognized their mistake. Sophie was waiting in the living room, watching me with eyes that looked older than they had a week ago. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I'm more interested in moving forward than looking back. What about Mom? Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I thought about that question for a long time. Marissa had betrayed me in every way possible, sexually, emotionally, financially, socially. She'd planned to destroy my reputation, steal my assets, and turn my own daughter against me. She'd shown no remorse, no recognition of the pain she'd caused, no willingness to take responsibility for her choices. Forgiveness isn't something you do for the other person, I said finally. It's something you do for yourself. When you're ready to let go of the anger and hurt, you forgive. But that doesn't mean you forget, and it doesn't mean you trust them again. So, maybe someday? Maybe someday I'll forgive her for what she did to me. But I don't think I'll ever forgive her for what she did to you. For putting you in the middle of this, for making you choose between your parents, for destroying your faith in the people who were supposed to protect you. Sophie curled up against my side, and we sat in comfortable silence, watching the late news coverage of the scandal that had consumed our neighborhood. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: the divorce proceedings, the media attention, the long process of rebuilding our lives. But tonight, we were together. Tonight, we were safe. And tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the nice guy who'd been too trusting for his own good. Not the victim who'd been blindsided by betrayal. But the man who'd fought back when fighting back was the only option left. The man who'd stopped being nice and started being strong. Epilogue. 6 months later. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in April. Marissa got the house, underwater on its mortgage, and in a neighborhood where everyone knew her as the woman who'd tried to destroy her husband's life. I got the shop, the villa, and most importantly, joint custody of Sophie. Ethan Cross disappeared 3 weeks after the scandal broke. Some said he'd fled to avoid his creditors. Others claimed he was in witness protection after agreeing to testify against some very dangerous people. I didn't care where he went, as long as he stayed gone. Tessa Duvall was convicted of embezzling over $200,000 from local charities. She got 18 months in minimum security prison and a lifetime ban from serving on any nonprofit boards. Her husband filed for divorce while she was awaiting sentencing. The neighborhood was never the same. Property values plummeted. The social hierarchy that Tessa had ruled for years collapsed overnight. People moved away, unable to face the daily reminder of how easily they'd been fooled. I moved too, but not far. Sophie and I found a house on the other side of town, near her high school, and close enough to my shop that I could walk to work. It was smaller than our old place, but it felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived in years. Mike and Tom made several more attempts to reconcile, but I wasn't interested. Some friendships don't survive betrayal, and ours was one of them. I'd learned to be more selective about the people I trusted, more careful about the relationships I invested in. Sophie thrived in our new life. She'd always been resilient, but watching her navigate the aftermath of her mother's betrayal had shown me depths of strength I hadn't known she possessed. She was planning to study psychology in college, inspired by her desire to understand how people could hurt the ones they claimed to love. As for Marissa, we maintained a civil relationship for Sophie's sake, but nothing more. She'd moved in with a new boyfriend, not Ethan, someone she'd met through her lawyer, and seemed determined to pretend the past had never happened. Sophie visited her every other weekend, but the relationship was strained. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. On a warm Saturday in May, I was working in my new garage when Sophie came running outside with her laptop. "Dad, you need to see this." She showed me a news article about a major charity fraud investigation in Connecticut. The woman at the center of the scandal looked familiar. It was one of Tessa's old friends from law school, someone who'd visited our neighborhood several times over the years. "Looks like Tessa wasn't the only one with creative accounting practices," I said. "Do you think they were working together?" "I think there are more corrupt people in the world than we realize. And I think most of them get away with it because the people around them are too trusting to ask hard questions." Sophie closed the laptop and looked at me seriously. "Are you happy, Dad, with how everything turned out?" It was a complex question that deserved an honest answer. Was I happy that my marriage had ended? No. Was I happy that I'd lost friends I'd trusted for years? No. Was I happy that Sophie had been forced to see the worst sides of people she loved? Absolutely not. But was I happy that I'd found the strength to fight back when fighting back was the only option? Was I happy that I'd refused to be a victim? Was I happy that I'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over peace? I'm happy that we survived, I said finally. I'm happy that we're stronger than we were before, and I'm happy that when people tried to destroy us, we didn't let them. Even though it cost us so much? Sophie, the things we lost, your mother's love, my old friendships, our place in that community, those things were built on lies. They weren't real. What we have now, what we've built together, that's real. That's worth protecting. She hugged me then, fierce and tight, and I realized that despite everything we'd been through, despite all the pain and betrayal and loss, we'd come out the other side intact. Damaged, maybe. Changed, certainly. But not broken. That evening, I drove to Murphy's bar for the first time in months. Ricky was still behind the bar, still polishing glasses with that ancient rag, still serving as confessor to the neighborhood's walking wounded. "Well, well," he said as I sat down. "Look who's back from the dead." "Just visiting," I said. "Thought I'd see how the old place was doing. Quieter since all the excitement. Lot of familiar faces don't come around anymore. Some moved away, some just can't face the neighbors after everything that came out." He poured me a beer without being asked, the same brand I'd been drinking for 20 years. "You doing okay, Lex? You look different. Older, maybe, or just tired." "I'm doing fine, Ricky. Better than fine, actually." "Good to hear. You know, I've been tending bar for 33 years now, and I've seen a lot of people go through what you went through. Most of them don't handle it as well as you did." "How did I handle it?" "You fought back without becoming the thing you were fighting against. That's rarer than you might think." I finished my beer in contemplative silence, thinking about the man I'd been 6 months ago and the man I was now. The old Alex had been trusting to a fault, willing to believe the best in everyone, eager to avoid conflict even when conflict was necessary. He'd been a good man, but he'd also been naive. The new Alex was harder, more skeptical, less willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. He'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones most capable of betrayal. That sometimes fighting back was the only way to survive. That sometimes being nice was just another word for being weak. I wasn't sure which version of myself I preferred, but I knew which one was more likely to survive in a world where trust was a luxury and loyalty was rare. As I drove home through the quiet streets of my new neighborhood, I thought about the future Sophie and I were building together. It wouldn't be the future I'd planned when I was married to Marissa, when I thought I understood the rules of the game. But it would be honest, it would be real, and it would be ours. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but I could see Sophie's light on upstairs. She was probably studying for finals, preparing for the next chapter of her life. In a few months, she'd be off to college, starting fresh in a place where nobody knew our story, where she could be whoever she wanted to be. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at this house that had become our sanctuary, thinking about all the battles we'd fought to get here. Some people might say I'd won, that I'd gotten my revenge on the people who'd betrayed me. Others might say I'd lost everything that mattered, my marriage, my old life, my faith in human nature. The truth was somewhere in between. I'd lost things that couldn't be replaced, but I'd also found strength I didn't know I had. I'd been betrayed by people I loved, but I'd also been supported by people I barely knew. I'd seen the worst of human nature, but I'd also seen glimpses of the best. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop being the person everyone expects you to be and start being the person you need to be. I got out of the car and walked toward my front door, toward my daughter, toward the life we'd built from the ashes of the old one. Behind me, the past receded into darkness. Ahead of me, the future waited, uncertain but honest. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.